And 5 names that you're going to hear me talk about are very important. The first are the Big Four. They were known as the Big Four, students. Huntington, Hopkins, Crocker, and Stanford. They were the wealthy businessmen of Sacramento. You recognize those names. Huntington Beach was named after Huntington. Leland Stanford University. He founded that. Charles Crocker owned a bank which eventually merged with Wells Fargo, and now it's Wells Fargo Bank. Crocker Bank used to be around. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, the most famous hotel in San Francisco is the Mark Hopkins Hotel. In fact, going to eat dinner at the top of the Mark is considered a really, really neat thing. When Mark Hopkins' house collapsed during the San Francisco earthquake, and then he died a few days later, his wife didn't want to rebuild the house. She built a hotel and named it the Mark Hopkins Hotel. Those were the Big Four. They were called the Big Four, the money men of Sacramento. Huntington, Hopkins, Crocker, and Stanford. And they had a dream of building a railroad. They were already wealthy, and they knew they could get even wealthier if they built that, if they could build a railroad. But people considered it impossible because of the Sierra Nevadas. How are you going to build a transcontinental railroad over these large mountains? They thought it was impossible. But in 1861, early 1861, a surveyor engineer named Theodore Judah didn't have any money, but he had a lot of wisdom and a lot of brains, and he was a wonderful surveyor. He walked, students, over the Sierra Nevadas, and he found a spot called a grade that he was convinced that they could build a railroad over that grade, that it was level enough. This was in early 1861. Then he came to Sacramento in 1861, later in the year, and he met with the Big Four, the money men, and he said, guys, I found a spot where we can build a railroad. You have the money and I have the brains. Let's form a partnership and we can do this. You guys will become very wealthy. So they shook hands on a deal in 1861 to build the Transcontinental Railroad. 1862, President Abraham Lincoln, in the middle of the Civil War, found out about this idea for a transcontinental railroad, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific. He thought it was a great idea, and he signed the Transcontinental Railroad Act, basically giving his approval, along with some money to build that railroad. What a great idea. So 1861 early, Theodore Judah walks the Sierra Nevadas and finds a grade to build a railroad. 1862, they begin building the railroad after shaking hands on a deal, and Abraham Lincoln signs the Transcontinental Railroad Act. 1863, the Big Four is tired of Theodore Judah. He wants to build the railroad safely. They want to build it quickly. They want to start making some money off this thing. He's like, no, we need to take our time. We need to be safe. So they're tired of him. So they throw him out of the partnership. They buy him out. This is in 1863. So Theodore Judah knows there's some people in New York that have a lot of money. He's going to go meet with them to see if they'll buy out the Big Four. But he has to catch a ship to get to New York, a boat. And it goes through the Isthmus of Panama. And while he is going through the Isthmus of Panama, he catches yellow fever and he dies on his way to New York. This is in 1863. Now we go way, May 10th, 1869, 6 years later. The Central Pacific with the Big Four and the Union Pacific coming from the east. Boom! They meet in Promondary, Utah, and they finish the Transcontinental Railroad. And they want to take this photograph of the people that are there when Leland Stanford is hammering in the golden spike to build and finish the Transcontinental Railroad. That photograph became very famous. Everyone who was anyone wanted to be in that photograph. Huntington was there. Hopkins was there. Stanford was there. Their families were there. Leland Stanford hammered in the golden spike. It became a very famous photograph. Once again, 1861, Theodore Judah walks the Sierra Nevadas, finds a grade to build a railroad. Later in 1861, shake hands with the Big Four to build the Transcontinental Railroad. 1862, Abraham Lincoln signs the Transcontinental Railroad Act. 1863, they buy out Theodore Judah. They throw him out of the partnership. He gets on a ship to go to New York and he dies. May 10th, 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad is finished. A fantastic photograph of everybody in the audience when they meet in Promondary, Utah. Leland Stanford was so impressed with that photograph that he decided to have a man do a painting of that photograph. And that painting is right behind me. This is an amazing painting. And people walk by on their way to the gift shop and they go, oh, great painting, I like it. And then they all keep on their way. What they don't know, because they don't stop to study this painting, there's a man in the painting who was not there on May 10th, 1869. He couldn't have been, because he had been dead for 6 years. But the artist knew that without putting Theodore Judah in that painting, the Transcontinental Railroad never would have been completed. Not only did he put Judah in this painting, but he has Judah facing out directly into the crowd, looking at the photographer, just like Leland Stanford. And I'm going to show you where Judah is. Somebody already spotted him. You see this, the Native American, then you see the guy with the brown cap on the lower right. He's got a brown hat, and I look right above him. There's a man with a dark black beard. You see him?
Yeah.
That's Theodore Judah. He had been dead for 6 years, but they put him in the painting. That's what made this painting so historic. A man who had been dead for 6 years is in this painting. And almost nobody stops. We just had a couple people walk by. That's okay. They don't know about the painting. They can't wait to get to the gift shop. Here's the irony of the gift shop. You know what people go to buy when they go to the gift shop? A replica of the golden spike. They sell them in there. And kids always can't wait to go buy the golden spike. Why is that so ironic? Because the real golden spike is right here. And people almost never see it. They gave Leland Stanford 2 golden spikes. One that he hammered in, and another one that was an exact replica, but it was a golden spike. The one that he hammered in at Promondary, Utah, is at Stanford University. It's on display there. I see a nodding head. Have you seen it? Yes, there you go. Well, there was another golden spike that they gave to Leland Stanford, and it disappeared for many years. It became known as the lost golden spike. Then when they were doing a renovation of the Stanford Mansion, they found a box. They shook the box and it was something heavy was inside. They opened the box and it was the other golden spike that had been given to Leland Stanford on May 10, 1869. And that golden spike was purchased by the Railroad Museum. And it was brought here several years ago. And so many people can't wait to go to the gift shop to buy a golden spike, and they don't even realize the real one is right where they have walked by. And they're so proud of that golden spike that they buy, but they never even realize that the real one is right here on display. It is my opinion that these 2 things are the most important things in the entire museum. And 75% of the people that come here never even see them. And that's why I start here. So I'm going to let you get up.